Welcome back. A good question is how you secure a website. How do you create user accounts? How do you manage passwords? How do we have roles and one person can do one thing and they can't do another? Well, that's not a hard thing to do. It's been done a million times. Matter of fact, every website that you ever have to authenticate has to do it at one point or another. The question is, do we want to do it again, or do we want to use something that's tried and true? Um, a good strategy is to use something that's already been created for you, and either extend it or consume it. So what we're going to do is consume it. We're going to create a database called AspNet Provider. It's already out there, and that database is going to work in conjunction with the VolTeer database. I could have easily taken these objects and put them in my own database. I like to have them isolated, so if there's ever an upgrade for this, it's easier to maintain. This doesn't change that often. In other words, the nuts and bolts of the provider doesn't change very often. Okay, so the question is, I want to be able to create an account in this database and using the provider, and then have the same account name or the user ID in our volunteer database. When you register for an account, I don't want to register twice. I want to register once and have records written to both. So how am I going to do that? So if I look at our register screen, a register screen is pretty simple. We've got a couple of fields on it: user, email, password, confirm password. And when we create a user ID, we're gonna use the existing provider. When the user clicks the register button, we're going to create a record in the ASP table, and we're going to create a record in the volunteer database. And it's going to exploit the same user ID. So let's show you what I'm talking about. Let's start it up. If I go to account, register, I'm going to register a new user, Chase Utley. It's baseball season. I'm going to give user, email, password, register. So it's going to go out and hit this method, register user. The first line there, membership user, new user, membership.create user, this thing will actually go out to the membership provider and create me a user and commit that change. If I go out to the user table under ASP.NET, I'll see Chase Utley's record right there. That's his user ID, or excuse me, user record. The application, the user ID, the username, lower name, anonymous, last activity date, it's already been committed. That line of code did that. Next thing I'm going to do is to check to make sure that the provider actually created the account. So if I look at the create status will tell me what, in other words, if Chase Utley was already used, it'll throw an error called duplicate username. This isn't an exception. These things are not necessarily exceptions. This is returned back as a create status. It's a little bit different. Either way, it worked. And now I have it on one side. I need to create it on the other. So I have an if statement that says if it was successful. Now I'm going to try to create the volunteer record. First thing I'm going to do is log the person in. Firm's authentication set cookie is a little bit of code that logs the person into the application. Next thing I want to do is create two instantiations. One is creating an object of volunteer, because I'm going to insert into the volunteer table, and the ASP, the user ID that's actually logged in. There's only a few things that are exposed to the application. I sort of have to go out of my way to find other things. I need to know this person's user ID. That's nothing that's returned. If I look at the current user of what a membership user is, if I look at the different methods that are available, I can't do it at runtime, but if I look at the different attributes and methods that are available, user ID is not one of them. I need to know the user ID. I need to know that user ID for that username. So in order to do that, I have to go against a view that's in the ASP table called VW ASP.NET membership users. And basically that view will tell me more than just the user ID. It'll tell me quite a bit. It won't tell me his password, but it'll tell me his encrypted password. There's just a ton of information here. When the last time the person logged in, the last time they failed logging in, so forth and so on. But when I call this for a given user ID, it's going to return me back the user ID. That's why I need to call the ASP_BLL. So let's go down to right here. I'm going to run a method called listUser, passing over a username. I'm passing over Chase Utley, and it's going to come through and say, look at the membership users where result name.username is Chase Utley. Excuse me. And this will return me back an object and fill it with all that information. Not a list of objects, a single object, because there's only one Chase Utley. It could only be one record for that for that given username. So instead of having to send back a list, I can send back a single, which is a single record of that, a single instance of that class. It does it. I come back. Chase Utley's user ID is now stored under the ASP user object, and the attribute is under user ID. That user ID is the same user ID that was created in this step. Now what I have to do is create a volunteer record and push in that vol ID, that user ID as the vol ID. This is me setting vol ID manually. I set it. Now I'm going to call insert volunteer context, passing over an object called vol, which is an instance of the domain. I'm sorry, is an instance of the domain model. Excuse me. I step over. Now, what's missing in this is some other information. I've got vol ID. I didn't give them an opportunity to give me first name, middle initial, last name, active flag. So these things, when they're created, it's going to be created as null. But that's cool. All I really wanted to do is tie the two things together by vol ID. Okay. I come back. After that's done, it's going to redirect me to it looks like at the root of the application. So at this point, Chase Utley is created in my membership. I can log off and log back on with Chase Utley's user information. Let's see if this works. If I log off, cool. Log in. Ugh, did I spell wrong? That quick, I forgot it already. Let's see. Chase Utley is actually, his email is that, and his username is Chase Utley. It's not C Utley. It's not the email address. Chase Utley. Cool. Chase Utley's logged in. Okay. Let's go out to the volunteer table. Remember, we were back here. Chase Utley, his user ID is that. This is in the ASP membership table. I'm going to copy his user ID on the clipboard. I'm going to pop back over here, go to the volunteer table, and let's put a query in and say where vol ID equals that. He's there. Now he's there without first name, middle name, last name, but he is in the volunteer table. So now what we can do is when we log in, what we're going to use the ASP provider databases for is for authentication. I just want to see, is he authenticated with a correct user ID and password? Does he have the right role for what I'm trying to do? All that good stuff. I don't want to find any personal information here. I don't want to find any names and so forth in this database, but I need to be able to handshake between this database and this database, and that's why we're going to use vol ID as that go-between. So back to where we were before. Remember I said register. When we were on the register screen, I didn't have first name, middle name, last name, or active flag. What we should probably do on the register screen, on this screen, is have fields out there for that information. So when the person is registering, they want a username, email address, password, and probably up top we'll say first, middle, and last name. And probably when they're registering, we're going to make them active. let's make them active now. Let's do that now because we know they're going to be active when they're registering. So where we set vol ID, let's turn it off and debug. When we set vol ID, we're also going to set active. Vol active flag equals true. That's simple. So at least I solved two of the 5 fields. The other 3 fields are first, middle, and last name. Excellent. The next is going to be, and I'm not going to do it on this one, but I'm going to change this form so it collects more information. And then what should happen is as the person registers, as the person either logs on or registers, they're going to be put probably to the root of the application, which is going to be default.aspx. It's going to push them to this. And from here, we should pull the current context. In other words, for Chase's information, give me all the information related to Chase based on the user ID. That's certainly after we do the register. Great, thanks a lot. See you later.